Are you sitting comfortably? Yeah? Well then, let me tell you a true 100% real factual story about how music nearly killed me. Nah, because I did nearly die and that was pretty scary, so I wouldn't joke about these things. How music nearly didn't birth me. Well, not that music would give birth to me, that was always going to be my mother. But how music nearly prevented my birth. Yeah, there we go. Let me tell you a story of how music nearly prevented my birth. I don't think music has prevented many things. Or should I say, I don't think music has prevented many good things. I think it has birthed a whole lot more. A study from Harvard has shown that relaxing music may lower blood pressure and heart rate after physical exertion. It can also improve mood and reduce anxiety, and through bringing people together, can be an antidote to loneliness and social isolation. Music has been around for a long time, like forever, basically. There's evidence of cavemen striking rock gongs 12,000 years ago to create music. Songs are ingrained into our very beings. We get a song stuck in our head as easily as we can get the hiccups, whether we like it or not. Singing in school assemblies was every single one of your guilty pleasures. Don't even try to lie. So I'm not here to tell you how music is shit, okay? Even if I nearly didn't exist because of it. I'm actually rather fond of it, so stop looking at me like that, okay? Okay, that's better. Let us begin. Let me introduce you to Elaine Woodhouse. Monday to Friday, she lived with her grandma and her grandma's kids. They weren't much older than her. Her Auntie Maureen was practically her sister, and she had a twin brother that she didn't get on well with. Spoiler alert, these days they get on fine. Her Auntie Pat, who is now as blind as a bat, took Elaine to see the Rolling Stones because she lived in London and she loved the Beatles and Barry Manilow. She loved music. Cannon Hall, opposite the Northern General, was where Elaine met Hazel. Oh, we all know Hazel. You don't? Weird. Me neither, actually. But Beryl said that Elaine would hit it off with Hazel. You'll hit it off with Hazel. And so she did. So they met at Cannon Hall. Then, let's go to Hillsborough at Christmas. Which is weird because, no word of a lie, I live in Hillsborough with my boyfriend now. It's 2 streets away, in fact, from where my mum and dad used to live. 2 streets away from where my dad left my childhood dog Shandy, named after, yeah, you know that, tied to a lamppost coming back from the chippy, and my mum inquired, "Where's Shandy?" when he got back with the goods. Well, that came later, I suppose. Anyway, back to Elaine. Let's go to Hillsborough at Christmas. So Elaine phoned the pub to see if Hazel was there. Remember, this is a while back we're going now, so they didn't have mobiles. The horror. So she rang the pub like Bart does in The Simpsons at Moe's Tavern. Huge ass. Can somebody check the men's room for a huge ass? Don't think it went like that. But then coming back on the bus after their drink, Alan and George got on the bus. Wow, thought Elaine. Wowee, OMG. What she actually thought, oh, he's a bit of all right. George, that is. This isn't a story about Alan. It would be a very different story, I'm sure, if it was. This was on Christmas Day. Did I mention that? The beginning of Elaine Woodhouse and George Healy. The next time they saw each other was the 17th of February. Elaine bumped into him on West Street. They swapped addresses because they didn't have phones, remember? They agreed to meet up next Thursday. The wheels were in motion, then promptly stopped when George never turned up. Elaine waited and waited and waited a little bit more. Her heart broke. She didn't know how to go on. Nah, really, and I quote, she thought, never mind. And that was that. Until the week after, a letter turned up in the post. A letter apologising to Elaine from George. George had absolutely zero sense of direction, possibly where I get it from. Elaine, however, can tell you every bus route in Sheffield and the surrounding areas. George hadn't known where he was going and had spent all his money on the horses. Not something I'm sure I'd admit to if I was George in this scenario. In future, Elaine and George met under the clock at the station in Sheffield because he knew where that was, and then Elaine would know where he was. One day, in the not so distant future, George said to Elaine, "I've got this friend who's got this girlfriend and he loves her very much and he wants to spend the rest of his life with her. What should he do? Should he tell her or not?" Elaine said, "I've no idea. I wouldn't know what to say." So George said, "It's you, you idiot." Elaine said, "Well, thank you very much. I feel the same way." They got engaged a few months later. In 1966, Elaine was 20 years old. You finding this story boring? Get ready. At 12, George had met, wait for it, Joe Cocker at school, and later they started the gas board together. Now, you may know Joe Cocker from such hits as Up Where We Belong and You Can Leave Your Head On. He's quite famous. Joe and George were friends. Joe sang and George played the piano. They were a great duo, even if I wasn't alive then, and wouldn't have been if George had said yes when Joe asked him to be his organist and gone jet-setting off to America. I wouldn't have even been a twinkle in his eye. But George was a piano player. Joe said, "Will you be my organist?" And George said, "I've got a piano." "We'll see if you can get an organ." George had begged his mum Jessie for an organ. They were very close and George was spoiled rotten as an only child. She said, "You can have a piano," and every time he opened it up to play, she put the lid down and said, "That's enough of that." Fate worked in George's favour. He got to spend many wonderful years with Elaine instead of going to America, and had two lovely daughters called Alison Jane and Andrea Lucy. Then, for stunning, sensational, out-of-this-world grandchildren, Ellie, me, Matt, James and Loz. He lived happily with Elaine until 2006, when he died after a glorious week in the sunshine in Ibiza. So yeah, it would have been sick to know all Grandad's stories from America and maybe even get me some contacts there. Hollywood and all that, right? But I'm very blessed that I do exist and that Elaine and George got to share their lives together. A story about how music nearly prevented my birth. Well, there you go. I don't know what you mean it's far-fetched, to be honest. I don't see it. I don't know about music, but love lifts us up where we belong, for sure.